Hey guys, I hope you're doing okay. Today we will do a little review and then we're going to talk about a new element involved in art called texture. But before we do that, let's review what we've already been taught. So looking back at previous lessons, the first lesson that we talked about was expression and how artists try to express themselves using their art. And as a viewer, we look at their art and sometimes ask, well, what is the artist trying to say? Another thing that we've talked about are lines. I spent actually over a week working on lines. Remember, we had vertical and horizontal and diagonal, zigzag, all the varieties. And this is one of the elements of art. Along with expression, artists use color, and color can represent, happiness or sadness. A song that we listened to is "Kind of Blue" by Miles Davis, and most of us thought that song was sad. So when we were listening to that song, the majority of us created art that used the color blue. And blue is a primary color, along with yellow and red. We didn't talk a lot about color, but that is one thing that we have spoke a little bit about. So we have 4 more elements that we need to talk about: shape, texture, form, and space. And so those are the 4 that we will continue with, but today we're going to focus on texture. I'm sure you've spoke about texture before. One of the phrases that some people say is, the lake looks as smooth as glass, which means the lake is undisturbed or it's really, really calm. Or maybe you've heard, that man's beard looks as rough, or head looks as rough as sandpaper. Both of those are phrases that use the word texture, and I bet you can picture or feel that as I say those phrases. In our art textbook, or in my art textbook, it says textures in art can be tactile, which means it can be touched, or it can be visual. So not only can art be created in sculpture, in which it could be touched, it could also be like a picture or a photo that also allows you to visualize texture. And here are some examples of visual textile artwork. And here are a few examples of tactile texture in which the artist used actual touch in order to show different varieties of texture. Okay, so for today's assignment, I'm going to ask you to choose between creating a visual texture piece or an actual tactile piece of texture. You could do both, and I will show you. Probably one of the simplest ways to create a tactile sculpture or texture piece is to use Play-Doh. So I've just laid out a piece of Play-Doh, and I'm just going to try to show you different ways to make texture. So I have a plastic fork, and I can poke holes. Like that. Or I could take a knife and make a different way to make texture. Now, can you imagine if I rub my fingers along these holes, the feeling that you would have? Or the difference between this, the holes and the lines? Now, obviously, I can do it with just my fingers as well. Scoot it over. That's going to have a different feeling than the previous two. Another way to create texture using Play-Doh is finding different textures in which you press the Play-Doh up to it. For example, if I wad this up and make it kind of rough, and then I press it up against the wall, a smooth wall, it will create a smooth texture along the Play-Doh. Or, you gotta be kind of smart on what you choose to press it up against things that are appropriate. I've already tested this out. But so my hat has a coarseness to it, and let's see, coarseness means rough. So I'm gonna take my Play-Doh and press it up against my hat and see if it'll get that texture on the Play-Doh. Ooh, look at this. So you can see that texture transferred over to the Play-Doh, from the hat to the Play-Doh. Okay, moving on, we are now going to do a rubbing to create texture. And basically what you'll need is a piece of paper, and I made quadrants, and a crayon with the paper taken off. It doesn't have to be a crayon. It can be a pencil. You just have to lightly use it. You won't want to press real hard. And basically what you're going to do is find a texture, put it underneath the paper, and then use the pencil or crayon to rub the texture through and onto the top of the paper. I'll show you. Okay, so what I have is my paper, and I have some aluminum foil, and what I'm going to do is just put the aluminum foil underneath the paper, and then I'm going to take my crayon sideways and then rub the crayon along the aluminum foil to show you the texture. Now, that doesn't show a lot. It shows some of the texture. You can see those little bumps. But if you look at the aluminum foil, check out the texture on it. Isn't that cool? All right, I have another texture. I'm going to use the bottom of my shoe to show you its texture. Ready? So there's the bottom of my shoe, and then the texture. The most popular probably rubbing would be using a leaf, and I challenge you to do that as well. So this week I would like for you to post either a visual, so a photograph of a texture piece, or I would like for you to actually create a tactile piece of texture, which could be aluminum foil, or it can be the use of Play-Doh or modeling clay. All right, guys, I hope you have a great week and a great weekend. Thank you.